The Girl Who Built a Spider by George Brewington. Chapters 5 and 6. Chapter 5. What's he building in there? Teresa could remember when the Paper Mill Mall was a bustling, thriving shopping center. She used to go there all the time with her dad. They would shop for new clothes for the coming school year, get lunch at the food court, and maybe, if she could talk him into it, buy a new robot kit from one of the 3 toy stores. She even met Santa Claus there. Teresa remembered wondering how the man responsible for delivering toys to all the children on the planet had the time to sit on a red and gold throne in a mall in Charleston, South Carolina, for the whole month of December. But one by one, the stores had closed for one reason or another. When half of them were gone, the mall became a sad and lonely place to spend a Saturday afternoon. Then a new and larger shopping center had opened in North Charleston, which was a lot more fun, and which caused even more of the old stores to close, which made the Paper Mill Mall even sadder and lonelier. Finally, the Paper Mill Mall closed altogether. But then, after the bionic baby bottom buffer became the invention that every household with a baby had to have, Dr. Flax made a fortune, and to everyone's surprise, he bought the place. The whole mall. "Can you believe it?" she remembered her father saying when he read the news on his phone. "This big-time inventor bought the whole dang thing. What in the world do you think he'll do with it?" Everyone she knew wondered, but no one she knew had ever been inside. Teresa felt an excitement bigger than winning first place when she saw the gray road sign that used to point the way to the Paper Mill Mall and had been replaced with a large green and silver sign that now read Flax Industries. "Do you think his laboratory takes up the entire mall?" "That's what they say," her father grumbled under his breath as he stopped at a red light. She had so many more questions, especially after last night's incident with Thomas Edison. Who did that kid think he was anyway? Was he an obsessed fan of Dr. Flax's? Who lets their son run around at night with a ladder? And who names their kid Thomas Edison? The light turned green, but father didn't go. He only sat there shaking his head. He couldn't say a word, but she knew what he was thinking. It had just been him and her for the last 9 years. She knew him better than he knew himself. "It's gonna be fine, Dad. I can leave any time. If it gets too dangerous, I mean." He looked at her with surprise. "How would you even know, Teresa? What's he building in there? We have no idea. What if he's creating an army of giant robots with razor teeth and guns for arms?" "I can handle robots," she said with a sly grin. "What if he's mixing chemicals he shouldn't be? What if you inhale toxic fumes? What if the whole place, God forbid, blows up?" He was panicking again. She understood why, but his anxiety could be frustrating. She sometimes wondered if he had had his way, would he keep her locked in her bedroom for the rest of her life? "If he doesn't provide us with gas masks for the chemistry lessons, I'll leave. If killer robots try to decapitate me, I'll leave. Dad, look at it like a free summer camp. We've got nothing to lose." "Teresa, baby girl, I don't care that it's free. I'm worried about you." "I know, Dad, but Dr. Flax is giving us the opportunity to build the inventions of our dreams. And maybe my new and improved spider will become a Flax Industry product. What if in the future everyone is driving solar-powered spiders? My spider! Can you imagine? When will I ever get a chance like this again?" He gripped the steering wheel tightly and looked at her.
"You know,"
he said quietly,
"sometimes when you get so determined like this, you have your mother's voice."
"And also," she continued, "I need to know if he can do it. And if he can do it, I want to be a part of it." Her father looked at her quizzically until the car behind them honked for them to go.
"Do what?"
he asked, slowly driving forward. "I need to know if Dr. Flax can really stop a hurricane." He didn't respond. That was good. She had put a halt to his panic, for now. He turned onto the exit with the sign pointing to Flax Industries. They drove another mile and she felt her heart beating in her chest. But something didn't seem right. When she looked left and right, she saw nothing familiar. Had they gone the wrong way somehow? Where were all the parking lots? Were they even still in the city? Where there had once been a vast stretch of blanched asphalt were now fields of pineapple plants. The spiky green leaves surrounded the entire former mall. Buds of fruits were beginning to show, and brilliant dragonflies flew among the leaves. Teresa knew they still had to be in the middle of downtown Charleston, but she felt more like she had been magically transported to a tropical island where the air was clean and sweet. Palmetto trees lined the narrow strip of dirt road that was not much wider than their car. It curved and wandered through the rows of pineapple plants as if it had never intended to leave them anywhere until, at long last, the little road brought them to the grand front entrance. The doors were familiar. They were still the 2-story tall grand arched doors that had once opened into a luxurious shopping center. But now, instead of transparent glass, the doors were made of solid metal, and the sign above them read, Flax Industries. The letters of the sign were familiar too. They were mismatched, all different fonts and sizes. Teresa recognized them from stores she used to know, recycled from signs that had once hung inside. The F was from Fourth Down, a sports memorabilia store. The LA had been borrowed from the LA Style, a fancy jewelry and accessory shop for fancy ladies. The X was from Extreme Boards, the store where all the skater kids shopped. The other letters had been taken from restaurants, electronics stores, and coffee shops no longer housed in this once lavish mall. There was only a very small square of asphalt left to park their car. They pulled up alongside the only other vehicle there, a black SUV with tinted windows. Ashley and her parents were standing in front of it, waiting patiently. Ashley was dressed in a brilliant blue dress with small pink polka dots. She was also wearing a very strong perfume that smelled like the gardenias in Teresa's backyard when they bloomed in the spring. Teresa wasn't wearing perfume. She didn't even own any. She had on an old Frozen t-shirt and blue jean shorts, expecting to get dirty as Dr. Flax had warned them. Ashley's parents were dressed as if they were about to give a presentation to a corporate finance committee. In fact, they were going to give a presentation to a corporate finance committee later that morning. Ashley's parents were both lawyers and as serious about their work as they were about their daughter's academic success. When she and her father got out of their car, Teresa saw that Ashley was holding the handle of a wagon containing 3 different aquariums, which were home to 3 different species of algae. Teresa was suddenly embarrassed. "I didn't bring my spider," she whispered to her dad. "I didn't know I was supposed to." Her father patted her on the back. He opened the trunk, and there was her spider, folded up neatly. "I wouldn't let you spend the summer anywhere without your secret weapon," he said. "You're my secret weapon," she said quietly, and hugged him right there. Then they took their place next to the Deans and patiently wait. Being a friendly hospital nurse, George Brown couldn't stand next to someone for very long without saying something to break the ice. "So, pretty impressive work by our daughters, eh? My name's George Brown," he said, sticking out his hand to Ashley's dad. Mr. Dean shook his hand firmly and professionally. "Rutledge Dean. Ashley didn't take first place, but yes, impressive work," Mr. Dean agreed. "She tried her best," her mother said flatly. Ashley looked down at her feet. 1 minute before 9, a large passenger van came careening down the palmetto-lined road, and even from a distance they could hear voices yelling. The boisterous family mobile came to an abrupt halt right next to them, and the side door flew open. 8 siblings bounced around inside, singing and laughing and grabbing one another's shirts while one tried to blow his nose into his brother's sleeve. John Cooper jumped out carrying a backpack and a beautifully polished, hollowed-out wooden tube with small openings carved in it from top to bottom. When he stood it up on its end, it towered 3 feet over him. His mother was driving, but rolled down the passenger side window to shout over the ruckus of her children. "How y'all doing? We got ourselves real winners here, don't we?" "They're sure something, aren't they?" George Brown replied with a friendly wave. Ashley's parents only stared, completely stunned. Yeah, real great. John gets to spend the summer here for free, Mrs. Cooper said. His dad and I really appreciate that. John's always been the scientific one. I gotta drop all his brothers and sisters off at camps this morning. Bobby Jr. here goes to baseball camp. Charlie Ann's got marching band. The twins, Rhett and Brett, are both soccer. Florence has Girl Scout retreat. Jackson is in a creative writing workshop for 3 weeks, and handsome Joey here is in Young Southern Leaders. My kids are a busy bunch. I'm the youngest and the smartest, John said proudly, as Charlie Ann leaned out the door with her trumpet and blurted 3 notes in his face, completely off key. Charlie Ann, you'll bust your brother's eardrums. Well, gotta go. You little inventors have fun now. Congratulations to your first place there, Miss Teresa. Teresa smiled at the unexpected compliment while Ashley dug her toes into the gravel. Mrs. Cooper was already turning around as Bobby Jr. reminded John not to be a dweeb as he pulled the van's door shut. The Deans regarded John quietly. He was grinning from ear to ear. Y'all want to see how my new bubble maker works? Sure, Teresa and her father said. John was happy to oblige. He turned on a portable fan that was at the base of the vertical log, and in a few moments, enormous oval bubbles slid out at the top and bumped into one another, forming themselves into a giant floating sunny-side-up eggs that drifted over the pineapple plants. Then, with a cigarette lighter that a 12-year-old boy should not have in his pocket, John lit several cups of colored incense inset vertically up the tube. In moments, the yolks of the sunny-side-up eggs were filled with pink and blue and yellow smoke. On such a quiet summer morning, they looked like blobs of wild magic floating away into the Charleston sky. They're beautiful, Teresa sighed. I know, John said proudly. They're my best bubbles yet. Mr. Dean was not amused. It's 10 after 9, he said crossly, looking at his expensive watch. Where's this famous Neil Flax? He's clocked in late, said a small voice behind Teresa. Everyone jumped. Teresa couldn't believe it. It was him. He was dressed in the same puffy winter coat with matching scarf, gloves, and boots, so that only his electric blue eyes could be seen. My name's Thomas Edison. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Chapter 6. No time for tomfoolery. Thomas Edison shook everyone's hand, and for such a small boy, he had a very strong grip. Did you win the science fair too? Ashley asked him. You didn't win, Ashley's mother corrected her. You came in second. Maybe this little boy won first place in another county. Ashley looked away. Teresa turned to say something nice to her to soften her mother's blow. She also wanted to pretend like Thomas Edison wasn't there. But he stuck out his hand, and there was nothing Teresa could do but be polite, take his hand, and shake it. The boy pulled her hand toward him quickly, forcing her down to his eye level. Please help me get inside, Teresa, he whispered urgently. But she didn't answer and tried desperately to pull away. If her father thought something weird was going on, he might panic, put her in the car, and end her internship with Dr. Flax right then and there. Nice to meet you, was all she said to Thomas. She pulled and pulled, but he shook her hand again and again until her arm felt like rubber. Oh, okay, that's enough now, her father said, prying her hand away from the strange boy in winter clothes. Then finally the front doors of the laboratory slid open, and a woman moved very quickly in their direction. Whoever she was, she had to be riding on a hoverboard, Teresa thought, because she glided toward them so incredibly fast she could not possibly be moving on human feet. She circled around the group before coming to an abrupt halt. She was all business. She wore a long white laboratory coat over a dark blue blouse buttoned up to her neck, with an even darker skirt that went all the way to the ground, so you couldn't even see if she was wearing shoes. Her hair seemed to be a metallic silver, if that were possible, tied sharply in the back. In her ear was the tiniest white wireless earpiece. Teresa thought she must be pretty important. She tapped rapidly on a clipboard with a pen and scrutinized each of the 3 children. Social convention requires me to introduce myself. My name is Miss Marie Curie. I am the director of the laboratory operations here at Flax Industries. Mr. Dean perked up, at once impressed. Ah, perhaps you're descended from the famous Marie Curie, the great scientist who discovered radium and the first woman to win the Nobel Prize? Miss Curie spun to face him, twirling around in one fluid motion. I am descended from no one, she snapped, and Mr. Dean didn't know what to say. She turned back to the children and began scribbling on her clipboard. You're John Cooper, 3rd place. John smiled and put one finger up. You can call me Buzz. Marie Curie was instantly perplexed. What? Why? Because that's my name, he shrugged. Miss Curie double-checked her clipboard. Buzz is not your name, you impudent little boy. It could be my professional nickname, Buzz the Bubble Maker. No, no one gets nicknames, she said curtly and moved on. Ashley stood up as straight as she could as Miss Curie examined her and her wagon of algae, all the while furiously tapping her pen. Ashley Dean, 2nd place. Ashley bowed slightly and nodded. Miss Curie dashed down a note, which Ashley tried to read. Miss Curie raised her clipboard so she could not. She moved on to Teresa and stared at her for a very long time, which made Teresa feel as awkward as ever. Teresa Brown, 1st place. Did you bring your spider? Thank goodness her father had thought to. Teresa pointed to it. Miss Curie noted this and then resumed staring at her. You seem nervous, she said. Teresa felt exposed. I'm not nervous. You are, Miss Curie said matter-of-factly. And we have no time for confidence building. That goes for all of you. During your time spent at Flax Industries, there will be no hugs, no hand-holding, no treats if you behave, no punishments if you misbehave. You will simply be sent home if you are out of order in any way. We are in the business of building inventions that will save this planet. So we have no time for tomfoolery, nonsense, ballyhoo, goofing up, goofing off, or goofing around. Is that understood? Because I, for one, was reluctant to approve your invitations at all. Children are destructive, insolent, and easily distracted. But the good doctor insisted. Wait a minute. Step forward, young man. Thomas Edison had been trying to hide as best he could behind Teresa, but even though he was small, he couldn't completely escape notice. Hello, Thomas said, trying to make his voice sound deeper as he spoke through his winter scarf. My name is John Cooper. No, it isn't, the assistant said angrily, pointing at the real John. His name is John Cooper. No, my name is Buzz, John said proudly. What did I say about tomfoolery? She snapped. You said you had no time for it, Ashley said smugly. Miss Curie spun around and glided right up to her, nose to nose. We will have no sycophantic snobbery either, she hissed. Ashley's mother gave her a swat on the shoulder. Ashley, speak when spoken to. Miss Curie turned back to Thomas, who was trying to retreat into his puffy coat. Miss Curie leaned in close to him as he tried to back away. So, do you still claim to be John Cooper, 3rd place winner of the Charleston County Middle School Science Fair? Thomas Edison processed the question for quite some time before growling in a deep, Batman-like voice, Yes. Miss Curie whirled around without seeming to move her feet and pulled a long needle attached to a syringe from her laboratory coat pocket and held it up for everyone to see. Then you won't mind a quick blood test to prove it. Everyone, including Thomas Edison, gasped in horror. You can't take blood samples from unwilling children, Teresa's father protested. That's illegal. Miss Curie grinned, and her green eyes glowed with an unnatural light. Oh, watch me. She lunged for Thomas and grabbed his left glove. Thomas pulled his hand back, leaving the glove behind, and everyone could see his hand wasn't flesh at all, but metal. Thomas quickly hid his artificial hand in his coat pocket, turned, and ran into the pineapple fields as fast as his tiny, bundled legs would carry him. They all watched him run until he ducked down behind a large pineapple plant and seemed to disappear. "Run away and hide!" Miss Curie yelled after him. "And don't come back!" Miss Curie still held his little glove in her hand. She pocketed it, tucked the needle away, and smiled politely. "Please excuse my scare tactics, but the doctor has been subject to envious and malicious enemies of late. I do hope you three won't prove to be as troublesome. First and foremost, my directive is to protect the owner of this laboratory and make certain no harm comes to him." Teresa's father couldn't hold back. "But you can't scare innocent children like that. It's not right." Miss Curie scoffed. "That was no innocent child. That boy didn't let me take a sample of his blood because he's not human. He's a robot named Thomas Edison, constructed by the good doctor. Unfortunately, he's been malfunctioning and has become a threat to our work here. Now, please, children, follow me so we can start the day. We are already behind schedule. Parents, you are welcome to leave. Return to retrieve your children at 5 o'clock. Then, with a final twirl, she turned and glided toward the front door. Teresa, Ashley, and John stepped dutifully behind her. But Teresa's father and Ashley's parents remained where they were, not knowing how to react. "Did she say that kid was a robot?" her father asked in disbelief. Beginning to panic, he followed Teresa. Ashley's mother followed him, and then Ashley's father followed her. Teresa felt blood pumping with excitement. She had always wanted to build a robot indistinguishable from real life, and it appeared that Dr. Flax had really done it. She wondered if she could do the same. Maybe she could improve on her spider's design so that she would look like a giant twin-flagged jumping spider, the coolest of all spiders. But she didn't say a word of this. She could tell her father was having second thoughts about letting her stay, and probably third and fourth thoughts too. Miss Curie approached the large metal front doors. They slid open before her, revealing an enormous lobby. The children audibly gasped, and so did their parents. Miss Curie whirled around as if she were skating on ice. "Didn't you hear me? No parents. Children, if you want to come in, come in. Otherwise, you're free to go home." Teresa turned to see her father anxiously stepping forward and backward. He reached out like he wanted to take his daughter's hand, drive her home, and never let her outdoors until the summer was over. Teresa took her father's hands and spoke as gently as she could. "Daddy, I can leave at any time, but I have to take this chance. I might just build something that can make this planet a better place. And if Dr. Flax can really stop hurricanes and save lives, then I know you'll be proud of me for being a part of that." Her father stared at her stunned. Maybe she could give a good speech after all. He stepped back. He exhaled. Her father let her go. "Okay," he said. "You've got me tongue-tied, baby girl. You go get 'em." But he knew he would anyway. Still, she couldn't resist what might lay beyond the doors before her, no matter how dangerous. She turned and followed Ashley, John, and the peculiar Miss Curie into the laboratory.